The soldier guarded her cell, then she saved his life. What could make someone save the life of the very person guarding them? And what happens when the line between prisoner and protector suddenly changes? Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you here for another story about courage, humanity, and the choices people make when everything is on the line. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming stories. Thank you for continuing to watch, support, and share these stories with us. Your time and encouragement mean more than you know. And before we start, tell us in the comments. Could you save someone who had been assigned to guard your cell? Now, settle in as we begin tonight's story. Don't waste your breath on her, Carter. She's German. The words followed Private Daniel Carter down the narrow corridor before the iron door had even closed behind him. He did not answer. Somewhere beyond the concrete walls, rain tapped against broken windows, carried sideways by a cold November wind. Inside the temporary detention building, every sound seemed sharper: the scrape of boots, the clink of keys, the distant cough of an exhausted soldier. Daniel stopped outside cell 7. The young woman inside sat on the edge of a wooden cot with her hands folded loosely in her lap. Emily Hartmann, 27 years old, German, white skin made paler by exhaustion, dark blonde hair gathered behind her neck. Her coat had been taken during processing, leaving her in a faded gray dress and worn shoes. No weapon had been found. No military papers. Only an identification card, a cloth bag, and enough unanswered questions to keep her behind a locked door. Daniel checked the latch. Once. Then again. You expecting her to disappear through the wall? Corporal Mason Reed asked from behind him. Daniel ignored the joke. Orders were orders. Emily had been detained near a restricted Allied supply route after curfew. She claimed she had been trying to reach relatives west of the river. Command had not decided whether to believe her. Until they did, Daniel's assignment was simple. Watch cell 7. He pulled a chair against the opposite wall and sat down. For nearly an hour, Emily said nothing. That bothered him more than questions would have. Most detainees demanded explanations. Some cried. Others shouted that they had done nothing wrong. Emily simply listened. Whenever footsteps approached, her eyes moved toward the sound before the person appeared. When a truck stopped outside, she seemed to distinguish its engine from the others. When someone coughed 2 rooms away, her attention lingered on the corridor. Daniel noticed. He told himself it meant she was searching for an escape. You understand English? He finally asked. Her gaze shifted toward him. Yes. Nothing more. Daniel leaned back. Then you understand that trying anything stupid makes things worse. I understand. Again, silence. Mason passed the doorway carrying 2 tin cups. Careful, Carter. Maybe she's planning the great escape while sitting perfectly still. He laughed and continued down the hall. Emily lowered her eyes. Daniel almost felt embarrassed by it. Almost. He reached for the cup Mason had left and winced. A shallow cut crossed the base of his right thumb, earned that morning while unloading a damaged ammunition crate. The medic had cleaned it quickly and wrapped it before moving on. Daniel pulled at the bandage. Across the corridor, Emily's posture changed. Barely, but he saw it. Her eyes were fixed on his hand. Daniel covered the wound. What? Emily did not answer immediately. For the first time since he had taken his post, something appeared behind her guarded expression. Concern. Not fear. Not calculation. Concern. Your hand, she said. Daniel glanced at the bandage. What about it? Emily looked from the wound to his face. Then she said quietly, You should have someone look at that again. Daniel stared at her. Behind him, the keys hanging from his belt touched the chair with a faint metallic click. Her attention rested on his right hand. Daniel flexed his fingers. It's a scratch. No, one word. Certain enough to irritate him. He set the pencil down. You a doctor now? Emily's expression remained unreadable. The skin around the cut is swollen. Daniel glanced beneath the loose edge of the dressing. A thin redness had spread beyond the original wound. Army medic already cleaned it. Then he should clean it again. Daniel gave a short laugh. There it was, he thought. The beginning of whatever she wanted. Food. Information. A favor. Perhaps an excuse to bring someone close enough to the lock. What happens next? He asked. Emily studied him. If it is nothing, nothing. And if it isn't, your fingers may become stiff. You may feel cold even when the room is warm. Later, you may start shaking. Daniel leaned forward. You've been sitting behind that door for 1 day, and suddenly you're giving medical orders. I gave you no order. Then what are you doing? Warning you. Footsteps approached. Mason Reed appeared carrying a dented tray and caught the final word. Warning him about what? My hand, Daniel said. Mason looked at the bandage and grinned. Hartmann planning to kill you with an infection? Emily stepped away from the bars. Mason slid her meal through the opening. Maybe she wants you in the infirmary, so someone easier gets guard duty. Daniel expected a reaction. None came. Emily picked up the tray and placed it beside the cot without touching the food. Mason left chuckling. The hallway settled again. Daniel returned to his paperwork, yet the pencil no longer moved easily between his fingers. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. A cold sensation crawled along his shoulders. He blamed the building. The heating system barely worked, and wind found every crack in the old concrete structure. Still, when he reached for his coffee, his fingers felt strangely tight, because she seemed to be deciding whether he deserved it. People usually show you something is wrong before they tell you. Daniel's irritation faded slightly. He glanced toward her hands. There were faint marks across several fingers, small pale lines too deliberate to come from ordinary housework. When she had accepted the tray, he had also noticed how naturally she checked the metal cup's rim before drinking. Not nervous. Methodical. You worked in a hospital? Emily lowered her gaze. Your dressing needs changing. That wasn't my question. I know. The corridor clock clicked toward midnight. Daniel rubbed his thumb against his palm. Pain answered immediately. Sharper this time. He pulled back the dressing. The redness had spread farther. Emily saw it. Her face changed, not dramatically, only enough for Daniel to understand that whatever she saw concerned her. Get the medic, she said. Daniel stood. A sudden wave of dizziness made the corridor tilt. His hand caught the chair. Emily came immediately to the bars. Daniel. It was the first time she had used his name. He looked at her. Her voice dropped. If you begin shaking, do not try to stand alone. You knew before I did. Daniel's voice carried differently that morning. Not softer, not friendly, but the suspicion had changed shape. A medic had replaced the dressing before dawn, cleaned the wound again, and left him with strict instructions to report immediately if the fever returned. Daniel had said nothing about the German woman who had predicted the symptoms hours earlier. Now he stood outside cell 7 holding a breakfast tray. Emily accepted it through the opening. How? She glanced up. How what? You knew my hand was getting worse. Emily placed the bread beside the tin cup. I looked at it. That's not an answer. It is the only one I have. Daniel watched her sit. During the next 2 days, he began noticing things he had previously dismissed. A prisoner farther down the corridor developed a rough cough. Before the guards complained about the noise, Emily asked whether the man. Emily was already standing before he hit the wall. Sit him down, she told Mason. Mason frowned. He can walk. He shouldn't. The man took 3 more steps. His knees folded. Daniel caught him. Later, the medic blamed dehydration and exhaustion. Mason stopped joking about cell 7 after that. But Daniel became more curious. Emily seemed to read people through details others ignored. The color beneath their eyes. The rhythm of breathing. The way someone protected one side while walking. Yet she never used those observations for herself. She never asked when her interrogation would end. Never tested the lock. Never questioned how many guards remained at night. That made less sense than an escape attempt would have. One afternoon, Daniel found her tearing a narrow strip from the hem of her dress. His hand moved toward his belt. What are you doing? Emily nodded toward the neighboring cell. An elderly prisoner had scraped his wrist against a damaged bed frame. Blood ran toward his fingers. For him. Daniel hesitated, then took the cloth. Emily showed him how to fold it before passing it through the adjoining opening. Her instructions were economical, practiced. Daniel finished tying it. Where did you learn that? Emily's eyes stayed on the old man. Somewhere people needed it. Again, a door closed before Daniel could look through it. That evening, he brought her water. She noticed the stiffness in his injured hand immediately. You should keep moving the fingers. You always tell people what to do. No, could have fooled me. Something almost resembling amusement touched her face. Then shouting erupted near the entrance. A soldier had dropped a supply crate and crushed 2 fingers beneath it. Men crowded around him while someone ran for the medic. Emily remained behind the bars, but her eyes followed everything. Raise his arm, and somewhere beneath the questions surrounding Emily Hartmann was a history written not in documents, but in reflexes. That night Daniel passed her cell during final inspection. Emily. She looked up. What were you before this? For several seconds, neither moved. Then a distant engine rolled beyond the compound. Emily listened until it faded. Someone who learned to notice things too late. Daniel wanted to ask what that meant. Before he could, the lights overhead flickered once, then twice. Outside, thunder rolled across the darkening sky. Something is coming. Emily said it before the first alarm sounded. Daniel Carter lifted his head. Rain hammered the roof now, driven hard enough against the building to make the old window frames tremble. Beyond the compound, thunder rolled across the ruined countryside. What? Emily was standing near the rear wall, listening. Then the lamps dimmed. Once. A second time. The corridor went black. Someone cursed near the entrance. 3 seconds later, emergency lights flickered alive, staining the passage in weak amber. Boots struck concrete. Generators failing. Mason shouted from the stairwell. West checkpoint lost power too. Another voice called for every available man. A supply truck had skidded near the outer gate, blocking the road while the storm damaged a communications line. Half the night detail was ordered outside. Daniel pushed himself upright. Too quickly. A pulse of heat moved behind his eyes. He steadied himself against the wall before anyone noticed. Almost anyone. Sit down. Emily's voice came through the bars. Daniel turned. I'm fine. You are sweating. It's warm in here. It isn't. He disliked how calmly she said it. At cell 7, his right hand failed to close completely around the key. Emily saw. You need the medic. He's outside. Then call someone. Daniel reached for the field telephone. Nothing. Deadline. A humorless smile crossed his face. Perfect. He returned to his chair. 5 minutes passed. His uniform suddenly felt too heavy. Another 5. The chill arrived. Not from the weather. It began along his spine and spread into his shoulders until his teeth nearly touched. Daniel hid the trembling by folding his arms. Emily came closer. You are shaking. Cold building. Daniel. He looked at her. There was no uncertainty in her face now. Only recognition. You should lie down. I'm not lying on the floor while guarding prisoners. Then you may fall onto it. He almost answered. The room shifted. Daniel blinked, but the walls refused to settle. He stood anyway. 1 step. 2. His injured hand throbbed with every heartbeat. The emergency lamps flickered again. For an instant, darkness swallowed the passage. When the light returned, Daniel was gripping the bars of cell 7. Emily stood inches away on the other side. Look at me. I said his knees weakened. Daniel tried to reach the chair. He never made it. His shoulder struck the wall before he collapsed onto the concrete. The key ring tore free from his belt. Metal scattered across the floor. Emily dropped to her knees behind the bars. Daniel. He heard her, as if from underwater. His vision narrowed. One key had stopped near the cell. Emily pushed her arm between the bars, fingers stretching toward it. A young soldier appeared carrying a lantern. Private Thomas Hale stopped when he saw Daniel. Jesus, Carter. He rushed forward. Don't lift him. Thomas froze. Emily gripped the bars. He needs medical help. Open this door. Thomas stared at her as though she had asked for his rifle. You're a detainee. And he is sick. I'll get the medic. There may not be time. Thomas knelt beside Daniel, uncertain where to place his hands. Emily watched Daniel's breathing. Touch his forehead. Thomas did. His expression changed. He's burning up. I know. Another crash sounded outside. Wind drove rain through a damaged window near the stairwell. Thomas looked toward the entrance. The medical team is at the gate. Then open the cell. No, Emily's fingers tightened around the iron. His wound worsened yesterday. He developed chills tonight. He is confused, weak, and barely responding. Thomas looked at Daniel, then at her. You expect me to unlock a German prisoner during a blackout? Emily held his gaze. No, I expect you to decide which order matters more if he stops breathing properly. That silenced him. Thomas swallowed. What can you do? More from that side. The answer was quiet. No pleading. No promise. Just certainty. Daniel made a faint sound. Emily's attention snapped toward him. Now. Thomas grabbed the key ring from the floor. His hands shook as he tested the first key. Wrong. Lantern here. Thomas obeyed before realizing he had. Emily placed 2 fingers against Daniel's neck, then leaned close enough to hear his breathing. Her movements changed completely. The reserved prisoner vanished. In her place was someone precise, focused, familiar with urgency. Help me roll him carefully. Thomas stared. You've done this before. Emily ignored him. Support his shoulder. Together they shifted Daniel. His eyelids fluttered. Daniel, can you hear me? Nothing. Emily examined his injured hand and saw how far the inflammation had traveled. Her jaw tightened. Thomas noticed. How bad? Bad enough. A shout echoed from outside. The medic was still nowhere near them. Emily removed her folded cloth, placed it beneath Daniel's head, and looked at Thomas. Bring clean water, blankets, and find anyone with medical supplies. Thomas hesitated only once. Then he ran. Emily remained on the floor beside the man who had carried the key to her prison. Behind her, cell 7 stood wide open. She never looked at it again. Stay with me, soldier. Daniel heard the words before he understood where he was. Something cold touched his forehead. His body felt impossibly heavy, as though the concrete beneath him had pulled him halfway into the ground. He opened his eyes. Emily was above him, not behind iron. Above him. For a confused second, Daniel searched for the bars. They were several feet away. Cell 7 stood open. Thomas returned carrying blankets, a basin of water, and a canvas medical pouch. This is all I found. Emily opened the pouch. Bandages, gauze, a thermometer, basic field supplies. Not enough, but something. Medical team should be coming. Then we keep him stable until they arrive. Daniel caught the word. His eyes drifted toward the doorway. Open. Nothing blocked Emily's path. You could go. His voice barely carried. Emily looked down. What? Door. Thomas followed Daniel's gaze and finally seemed to understand. Emily could have disappeared minutes ago. Instead, she was kneeling beside the man assigned to keep her confined. Why didn't you run? Daniel whispered. A gust rattled the windows. Emily wrung water from a cloth and placed it against his neck. Stay awake. That isn't an answer. No, even now. Daniel almost smiled. Pain erased the attempt. His breathing shortened. Emily noticed immediately. Daniel. Eyes open. He forced them toward her. Tell me where you're from. What? Where? Ohio. What town? Dayton. Good. Keep talking. Thomas returned. Emily handed him the basin. Watch his breathing. If it changes, tell me. You're telling me? Yes. Thomas did not object. Minutes stretched. The corridor that had once belonged to guards now moved according to Emily's voice. Turn him slightly. Keep him covered. Not too much water at once. Call his name. Simple instructions. Measured. Certain. Then boots sounded from below. A medic and an army doctor hurried into the passage. The doctor stopped when he saw Emily beside Daniel. Who let her out? I did, Thomas said. The doctor's face hardened. Emily stood immediately. He has a worsening wound, high fever, altered awareness, and increasing weakness. Someone who didn't survive long enough to teach me twice. The doctor said nothing. Daniel was carried toward the stairs. Just before darkness took him again, he heard a metallic sound behind him. Emily Hartmann had closed the door of cell 7 herself. She went back into the cell by herself. Dr. Samuel Bennett stopped writing. Across the infirmary office, Thomas Hale stood with rainwater still darkening the shoulders of his uniform. You're certain? I watched her do it. Bennett looked through the glass toward Daniel Carter's bed. The fever had begun to ease after treatment, though Daniel remained weak. Another hour without intervention might have made the outcome very different. Bennett closed the chart. Bring me Hartmann's file. By morning, Emily was sitting behind the same locked door. Nobody had ordered her back inside. That detail traveled through the building faster than the storm had. Mason no longer made jokes when passing cell 7. Thomas barely looked at her without remembering the open exit she had ignored. And Bennett wanted answers. The file provided few. Emily Hartmann, 27, born near Castle. Civilian identification verified. No military rank recorded. No party position. No weapon training documented. Then Bennett found a handwritten note attached to an older municipal record. Medical auxiliary. He read further. A converted schoolhouse outside Fulda had served as an emergency treatment station during the final months of fighting. Another document recorded 2 Allied airmen brought in after a crash. Both survived long enough to be transferred. Emily Hartmann was listed among those who treated them. Bennett went directly to cell 7. Emily stood when he approached. You worked at a field hospital. Her expression tightened. It was not a hospital. What was it? A school with broken windows. You treated soldiers there. We treated people. including Allied personnel. Emily said nothing. Bennett held up the records. I have statements. Then you do not need mine. He studied her. Why didn't you tell the officers questioning you? Would it have changed what they believed? Maybe. Emily looked toward the barred window. Maybe is a luxury people learn to stop trusting. Bennett lowered the papers. Carter is alive because you recognized what was happening. No. He is alive because your team reached him. You kept him stable until we did. Silence. Bennett had interviewed decorated medics who spoke more proudly about less. Emily simply returned to the cot. Later that evening, Daniel woke fully. Bennett was beside him. How long? 2 days. Daniel tried moving his right hand. Bandaged. Sore. But responsive. Then memory returned. The blackout. The floor. Emily. The woman in cell 7. Bennett watched him carefully. She saved you time we couldn't afford to lose. Daniel stared at the ceiling. Who is she? Bennett placed the recovered pages beside his bed. Not who we thought. Daniel read slowly. When he reached the statement about the Allied airmen, his eyes stopped. At the bottom of the page was Emily's name. No medal. You need another day in bed. I've had 4. And nearly died before them. Daniel buttoned his sleeve carefully. His strength had returned slowly. The fever was gone, but every movement reminded him how close his body had come to failing. Bennett watched him stand. You read the investigation report? Twice. There was little left to investigate. Emily's identity had been confirmed. The route where she was detained had recently been redesignated, and civilian notices had never reached several nearby villages. No evidence connected her to sabotage, military intelligence, or any hostile organization. Her detention had begun with suspicion. It was ending with paperwork. Daniel walked back to the holding building before noon. The storm had passed. Sunlight entered through patched windows, exposing every crack in the old walls. Mason saw him first. Well, look who decided not to die. Daniel almost smiled. Where is she? Mason's expression changed. Same place. Daniel continued down the passage. His boots sounded unfamiliar to him now. Once, that noise had announced authority. Today, it felt like an apology arriving too late. Emily was standing beside the narrow window when he reached cell 7. She turned. For the first time since they had met, Daniel saw surprise break through her composure. You are walking. So I've been told. Her eyes dropped automatically toward his hand. Better. Better. A pause settled between them. Daniel reached for the key ring. Emily noticed. Am I being questioned again? No, the key entered the lock. That sound had defined every conversation they had shared. Metal entering metal. A boundary controlled by one person. Daniel turned it. Click. He pulled the door outward. Emily did not move. You're leaving, he said. They aren't. He stepped away from the entrance, leaving the path completely clear. Emily approached slowly. At the threshold, she stopped. The same place she had crossed during the blackout. Daniel remembered her kneeling beside him while escape waited behind her. I read the records, he said. Emily became still. The schoolhouse. The wounded men. The Allied airmen. You should not have. I wanted to understand. Did you? Daniel considered the question. No, that answer surprised her. He continued. But I understand enough to know I was wrong about you. Emily looked down the passage. You were following orders. I was also making judgments. Silence. Daniel removed something from his pocket. Her identification card. He held it toward her. Emily took it carefully. Their fingers nearly touched. I owe you my life, he said. Her expression closed again. No, yes. You owe your doctors. I remember who stayed before they came. Emily looked at him then. Not at his uniform. Not at his injured hand. At him. Daniel stepped aside. No command. No escort. No guard between her and the stairs. Emily crossed the threshold. Behind them, cell 7 remained open. For the first time, Daniel did not reach back for the key. Why did you save me? Emily stopped beneath the entrance arch outside. Morning had washed the compound in pale winter light. Daniel no longer wore the expression of the man who had first sat opposite cell 7. The suspicion was gone. So was the certainty. What remained was harder. Humility. Emily adjusted the strap of her bag. When wounded men came to the schoolhouse, we stopped asking what uniform they wore. Daniel waited. At first, people still asked, she continued. German? American? British? Civilian? Her fingers tightened around the strap. After enough nights, there was only one question left. What question? Can this person still be saved? Daniel lowered his eyes. Emily looked toward his healed hand. That night, you were not my guard. The words landed quietly. You were simply the person in front of me who needed help. Daniel breathed out. And if I had treated you worse? Emily considered it. I would like to believe I would have done the same. Not certainty, not sainthood, just truth. That answer affected him more than any heroic declaration could have. At the gate, Thomas Hale waited beside the checkpoint. When Emily approached, he straightened instinctively. Not because anyone ordered him to. Mason stood farther back. He removed his cap. Emily noticed both gestures and said nothing. Daniel walked with her beyond the barrier. There, their paths separated. His led back toward the barracks. Hers followed a narrow road west. Emily. She turned. Daniel searched for something worthy of the moment. Thank you seemed too small. I'm sorry seemed too late. Finally, he said, I hope you find your family. Her expression softened. I hope you go home to yours. Then she walked away. Daniel remained beside the road until the gray coat and dark blonde hair became another figure among civilians moving through the distance. Years later, Emily Hartmann had taught him something quieter. A uniform could tell you where someone stood. It could never tell you what they would choose when another life depended on them. The soldier had guarded her cell. But when death came looking for him, the prisoner became the one who refused to walk away. And in the end, neither of them remembered the bars as clearly as they remembered the moment they stopped seeing them.